Hey everybody, welcome to the Muscle Intelligence Podcast. This is Ben Picolsi sitting in London, England with my great friend Phil Learney. Phil, I'm very grateful for you being here.
Thank you for having me.
So we met a long time ago, man, and your pursuit, your relentless pursuit of education was always fascinating to me, and you're a constant student of the game, and you've turned that into an incredible business helping personal trainers with the knowledge and skill set to ultimately build the business, achieve amazing results, and ultimately understand this convoluted, complicated process of body transformation, follow that up with the ability to build business, market, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everything that goes into building an amazing personal training business. Sound about like a good synopsis?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. How did that begin for you, man? So I know, so when you and I met, all I remember is you sitting at the table.
Where did we meet?
Eating every 2 hours, a ludicrous amount of food, like you're relentlessly pursuing building muscle, and reading textbooks. And that was fascinating to me because I was the only other guy that I knew that did that. And I was like, I like this guy. We're going to get along really well. And then it turned into you one day saying, hey, man, I'm going to start this online trainer resource. And then it seemed like almost overnight, it just popped up, and it was such an amazing resource. And you, from the outside perspective, did it so quickly yet so well. It seemed like you were working 24 hours a day.
Yeah, it was something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it probably was. Yeah, you did a hell of a job, man. So tell me how it began for you. Why this passion to help personal trainers? Because you're obviously an amazing coach yourself. I don't think you still are, but why this desire to help?
Well, I think I started as PT with the intent of helping people with almost mimicking the journey that I took. I started training because of insecurities, because of a desire to look better, to feel better, to perform better, to have a better outlook on things. I think, I was talking about this yesterday to some friends, and what the gym did for me was change my outlook on a lot of things. It wasn't just about training. It wasn't just about getting in better shape or whatever it might be. It just changed my mentality, my approach to things, and things that I thought I couldn't do before, I'd actually approach in a manner where I'd be like, yeah, I can do that. I can achieve that, I can accomplish that. And I wanted to then convey that to other people. So going back a long time ago, it was when it came to career choice, I was very, I was into practical things. I did art, I did design, I did PE, my sister was very heavily academic, and I wasn't really into that. We were chatting about this just en route to here. And I decided, right, I'm either going to go down the design route, which is sort of what I wanted to do, or I'm going to go and do something to do with physical activity. And being a professional athlete wasn't really an option. I was good at some things, but I was realistic. I was like, look, and it wasn't a negative thing. It was just the fact that the acceptance that I probably wasn't big enough and I probably wasn't fast enough.
You worked really hard,
and it was,
and you made a lot of your genetics. And
but it was never going to be groundbreaking. Right. And I accepted that very early. And I was like, right, so what am I going to do? So I decided I was going to be a coach, decided to be a fitness instructor, which, as it was at the time. And I remember Dad saying to me, he goes, but what is that? What kind of living and career are you ever going to make out of that? And I always remember that conversation I had with him. And that then turned into personal training. Where I started as a fitness instructor, they didn't do personal training, so I had to propose it to them. I put it to them. I said, look, people want to train with me. How about presenting this? And as I said, this was a long time ago. This was up north. Personal training wasn't a thing. People hadn't heard of it. It wasn't an offering in all the gyms or whatever it might be. People went to a gym to train and then they left, and that was it.
So what was a fitness instructor? What's it?
A fitness instructor was... So in the UK, we have the level 2, which is the fitness instructor certification now. So when you're a fitness instructor, essentially you can write programs.
Like Zumba class?
Yeah, but you can write programs for people in the gym for them to then go away and do themselves.
Got it.
So you're not doing the one-on-one stuff. You're not at the level where you can get insured to actually coach someone, face to face. So they have the level 2 and then the level 3, which is the PT. And obviously that's changed over the years as I've been in the industry a long time. And it came from that point of, I want to help my clients. So it started as coaching, it went into PT. I had this diverse sort of range of clients along the way. I dealt with professional athletes, I dealt with actors, actresses, I dealt with body transformations, I dealt with people who had injuries, things like this. And it all developed from that, wanting to help people and wanting to move them down the avenue of where I was. And some of my greatest transformations are nothing to do with the physical. They're to do with the mental, they're to do with the approach that, these people have changed and they are more positive about life, they're more positive about, I know it sounds
Where
all
the
real
mind goes, the body will follow,
it
man.
sounds cheesy and tacky, but they're my best transformations. Or people with injuries, like debilitating injuries. I remember a guy that I dealt with who, the first session we did some assessments. He had a double hip replacement, he had double knee replacement, and he literally could not lift his foot, 2 inches onto this step. And by the time we were finished, he was leg pressing, he was squatting, he was, and it was phenomenal. We got him this range of movement back, which there was no guarantee we were going to, but we did. And it was a major thing, but it wasn't quantifiable. So it all came from that desire to help people. And then as I progressed and got better as a coach, the problem is that I didn't lose clients. So my retention of clients got good, which is what you work on, throughout your entire career, is that you want to retain clients. And the problem was I retained clients for years and years and years and years. So it got to the point where the reality is that beyond my work outside of the gym, which was I was on online forums, I used to jump on all the bodybuilding forums in the UK and used to contribute and put stuff in there. And I never got paid for any of that. There was never a marketing angle. There was never and this was pre-social media almost. There was never a marketing angle. And there was never something I could sell to these people, because ultimately people would message me, go, do you do personal training? I'd be like, yeah, but I'm full. Sorry. And that was it. So the reality sort of kicked in later in my career that I'm only really dealing with about a dozen people a week, which means I can only help a dozen people. And if this continues the way it is, and when I retired from personal training, my shortest serving client was 6 years.
Wow.
So, I'd done a couple of little projects throughout along the way. I did a couple of actors, actresses for little short-term transformations and things like this, and a couple of bodybuilders for shows. But for the most part, my consistent clients, my shortest serving client was 6 years. So I'm like, I can't help any more people.
So what was it about you that made you different? So if, most trainers are going to retain someone for a few months, maybe often a few weeks, and having a hard time getting retention, what was it about you, in your eyes, that made you different?
I think it was the fact that I looked at what people needed from me and I delivered that, in that they needed support outside of the gym. They needed that, and I talk about this a lot, especially with the business side of things, is that everything is about servicing people's needs. And I always use the analogy of hotels, right? You travel a lot, right? And a lot of the time we're just paying for service. We're not paying for amenities. We're not paying for, a plane is a plane. A seat is a seat. A hotel is a hotel. A 5-star hotel is a 5-star hotel. It has a swimming pool, it has a spa, it has whatever it might be. But ultimately, you're paying for the service, you're paying for the experience, you're paying for whatever, and that's what I believe I delivered. I delivered an experience. I delivered an experience every single time they walked through the door. They would remember what we did and why we did it and how we did it. And outside of that, I would manage their life. I'd manage their lifestyle. I remember this was a short-term gig towards the latter end of my career, and I was dealing with an actor for a big film, and it just got dropped on me by the studio, and they said, look, we need this person to be, and they gave me this timeline. I'm like, whoa, I said, this timeline is short, and you want this to happen in this timeline. I said, we need to get to work immediately. And this guy was a vegan. And so I'm calling up all the food companies that I know that deliver. None of them do full vegan menus. So I'm like, what am I going to do here? So I've gone, bought all of the food, prepped the menu, gone home, cooked it all, stuck it in a cool box that I bought, stuck it in an Addison Lee, got it shipped off to the 5-star hotel he was staying at. Because I'm like, this needs to be on the ball. So it was stuff like that and that one stands out because I remember slaving over this thing. I never cooked vegan food in my life. I was like, I've got tofu all over the place and blah, blah, blah. And I had no idea. And then just this whole process of, I had this taxi came, picked it up. I even spoke to the chef at the restaurant, was a Michelin star chef. But I said, look, I need to hit these macros. He rang me back. He goes, I don't know what macros are in food. He goes, I just prepare really tasty dishes. Right. I have no concern for what the content is. So can you tell me what? I said, look, the easiest way for me to do this is just make it myself and send it to you. So we ended up doing that for 2 or 3 days before we could get him hooked up with a food delivery company that would give him what he needed throughout this journey. And that always stood out and that was this service thing where if I had a client traveling, I'd look at what was available on the plane. I'd look at what was available in the hotels. And if they wanted to do that, and they wanted me to do that, I'd find them gyms, I'd find them coaches, I'd find them, whatever they needed for them to continue.
To get the
and
results.
and it was just stepping above that. It was that experience you get from a really good 5-star hotel,
right,
where they go above and beyond. You ask them to do something, they do it tenfold. It's like, wow, that isn't what I expected. That's it, even more so. And this is the what I talk about in business, is that if you go way over what people expect, if you give them more value than they ever expected, they're going to keep coming back. It's like when you get a mistake, and we've had mistakes where people have been sent the wrong items. So one of the first examples of this was with my book. A book had gone out, and there was something wrong with it. It was damaged, or it hadn't made it. I can't remember what the exact story was, but it was appeasing that customer in a way that we sent them a T-shirt and I sent them a signed book, and all of a sudden they're going to remember that transaction for the right reasons,
sure,
not for the wrong reasons, which they would have remembered it as a bad experience. And I talk about this a lot, in that people only remember bad experiences or really good experiences, the stuff that's what they expect. And this is the problem with personal training. People go, they have a personal training session, and it's exactly what they expect, and that's it. Which, when you're in an industry that relies heavily on word of mouth, that's not good enough, because there's going to be no word of mouth.
Right. It's like a Tony Robbins seminar, right? So you go there, and it's like every other seminar until you go walk on fire or walk on coals, right? And
Yeah.
like, oh, now this is an experience,
It's
rather, or like
something
it's got you jumping up and down. It's like a rock
right.
concert, right?
Yeah.
Rather than going to do a seminar, he had an experience this weekend. It's going to make it remarkable.
Something different. And it's those tiny little details that will make that experience exceptional. The things that are trivial. And, I talked about this yesterday. The first gym I ever worked at, I used to buy cases of water, and I used to put them in my locker. So my locker was just full of cases of water. And every time a client came in, I'd give them a bottle of water. But then every other client that was having PT in the place would go, how come they get a bottle of water and I don't? Which made me stand out. The trainers hated me. And again, this was the place we were just at before. I went and met Kathy beforehand, and Kathy had actually commented on one of my posts on social media the other day, and she goes, yeah, I remember all the trainers hated you. Because I was literally there 5 minutes, and I'd been there, she said 5 minutes, it wasn't. I'd been there like 3 or 4 weeks, and Time Out magazine rolled up, and they wanted to do an interview with me as one of the best personal trainers in London. I'd actually been stuck in an office for a couple of years, because I'd been brought on by a company in London to build their gyms. They were building these exquisite gyms. They brought me on as the gym manager and the manager of the medical team. And I'd been stuck in an office for 2 years, so I'm personal trainer for 2 years. And they brought me on to this gym in London, which was the place to be if you were a coach in London. And a couple of weeks in, I've got a waiting list. A couple of weeks after that, I'm getting interviewed by a Time Out magazine about being one of the best personal trainers in London. I'd only been back in personal training for literally 6 weeks.
Right.
And apparently every single coach in the place. And I had clients. I took on a client there, and the client only told me a couple of years after that. She was one of my longest serving clients. She told me a couple of years later, that she got a phone call off 3 of the trainers from that gym telling her not to train with me because I was a clown. And I was like, because I'd rolled in there, and for me, it wasn't an experience. Being a PT was not about me going into a facility and making friends with other PTs.
Sure.
For me, it was about going in there, servicing client needs and getting busy, which is how I went in. I went in like a bull in a china shop. I've gone in, I've started talking to management, I've, talked to the sales and marketing team. I was like, I was there just
World needs more trainers like you, man.
But this is this thing that we talk about, and hence that brings me on to where the academy kind of developed, is that I was like, look, the reality is I'm only going to deal with half a dozen clients. So how do I deal with more clients? So I thought about online coaching, thought about group models, and I'm like, well, hold on, if I just go straight to the horse's mouth here and go, right, if I start coaching coaches, and at the time I'd actually started dabbling in seminars. I'd started doing some seminars. I did a couple of UP and blah, 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 and they were quite popular. And this, shy, reserved chap from the north who, used to be terrified at university when he was told to speak in front of a bunch of people was like going, I'm going to charge people to come and listen to me speak, and it just took off. And this was at a time when nobody else was doing it. So, I'd open a seminar up on fat loss and I'd sell 200 tickets to it. So I was filling this huge room out, and there's hundreds of people in it. I always remember walking into this room going, "Oh my God, they're all here to listen to me speak." And I, from a financial perspective, I was selling 100 couple hundred tickets, you know, 150, 200 pound a pop.
Yeah.
You know, it was a phenomenal thing, you know, from a business perspective, but also, wow, these people are here to hear me speak. So then from that, it was, hold on, could I then develop something on an educational level? The level 3 was horrendous. The entry point to this industry, certainly in the UK, is awful. I think in the US it's not much better, in that you can decide you're going to be a PT. You can jump on Groupon and get a PT certification for about £40. You know, and that is, and everybody's moaning about this entry point. They're going, you know, the level and the standard of PT in this country is horrendous. I said, brilliant. I said, that means you're going to stand out.
You have an opportunity.
You're going to stand out.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you know, gyms like your gym opening up, and then this big box gym opening right next door to it. And this was a discussion I had at the conference the other week. A guy came up to me and you could see the fear in his eyes. He was like, look, I own this private facility and there's this big boxed budget gym just opening right next door to me. I said, brilliant. And he just looked at me. He was, what? I said, brilliant. I said, you don't have to worry about marketing. I goes, you got 3,000-4,000 people coming to your door. I said, your service is better than theirs, right? He goes, yeah. I goes, brilliant. I said, they create an entry point for people who normally wouldn't go to the gym. Because what these budget gyms do, and I don't think it's really a model that's massive in the US, but here what we have is these budget gyms that there's no reception desk. You swipe, you go through a gateway and blah, blah, blah. So you don't have to communicate with people. So you've got these people at home who are terrified of the gym because of the human contact. They don't want to look at, you know, and I had this consult with a guy who ex-bodybuilder, opened a gym, didn't cater for bodybuilders, they catered for the general populace. And as you walked in, there was just a big wall with pictures of bodybuilders all over it. I said, get rid of that. I said, because, you know, Joe Public, who's going to walk in, and Doris from down the road, who's, you know, in her 40s, who wants to join your gym and come and work out, is going to walk in, walk straight back out again. I said, they need something welcoming. I said, and don't stick a bodybuilder on your front desk. I said, stick somebody who is like your mum.
Sure.
You know, who's going to talk to them, who's going to communicate with them, because straight away you've got, and the gym we were just at before, Third Space Soho, they used to employ, and I don't know whether this was intentional, but around that area, it's a big media hub around Soho and Golden Square and blah, 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 and they used to employ want to be actors and actresses, and dancers and entertainers, and all the reception desk is all, you know, entertainers.
Right. Yeah.
So they're all flamboyant and blah, 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 and they'd remember people's names. And it was like you'd walk in and every single member would be greeted with this phenomenal smiling face. And, you know, it's like in a lot of commercial gyms, you walk in and it's sort of somebody hands you a towel, doesn't even make eye contact. And it's horrendous. And it's what we talk about with experiences, right? So then it was like, how am I going to cater this? And my logic then was, if I can teach a coach who's then going to go away and coach 30 or 40 people in his career or her career, I'm now helping inadvertently this knock-on effect of all these other people.
Right.
So how do I keep doing what I did to start with, but do it in a better way and get it to more people?
Right. So you took all this information and you built a training certification, an online, more than just a certification. It's an online hub for everything to do with personal training. And you also wrote a book, a great nutrition book, which is actually my most suggested nutrition reference for people. I read it. I love it. It's amazing, man. So, walking through the book and your course maybe, or your seminar where you go out and teach people fat loss, what are the things that, you know, the general public needs to know about fat loss and the coaches need to know about fat loss that you would teach in these seminars? So fat loss is one thing that to you and I is like, oh, well, we know how to do that. That's relatively simple. But to most people, it seems to be this polarizing conversation between these people who say it's only about macros, and then the people who say there's other factors influencing this. I'd love to know where you stand and your approach and the common mistakes people make.
It depends largely on who you're dealing with, in many respects, as to how you approach it, because this isn't about the minutiae, the stuff where there are factors, this, that, the other. Most factors that we're concerned about are probably irrelevant to the vast majority of people that we deal with. So I'm dealing with coaches who, for the most part, are dealing with a fat loss population. They're dealing with general public. They are not dealing with athletes. They're not dealing with bodybuilders. They're not dealing with, you know. And the problem we have is most of the people in our industry want to educate themselves and learn this stuff at this higher advanced level. They want to know how to get someone shredded. You need to know how to get someone to lose weight first.
Sure.
You know, so you have to be there at the start of this journey. So when we look at, you know, again, Doris from down the road, Doris comes in, you know, wants to lose a bit of weight. is it about calories? Is it about food choices? It depends. It depends on where her problem lies. Is that I remember back in the day, I used to be very anti-calories. I used to be like, look, I didn't lose weight through counting calories. I lost weight through changing my food choices. My food choices were awful, which meant if I changed my food choices, I'm going to drop my calories. So I kind of did it in a different way. So therefore, I got hung up on this whole thing where it's about clean eating. It's about this, that, and this is, years ago. And I still believe that to some degree, because inadvertently, if you clean up what you eat and you start eating more whole foods and blah, 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 you will drop your calories. So we're creating the same outcome, but we're just approaching it in a slightly different way. So a lot of the stuff we do with coaches is looking at, the general populace and what are the problems? The problems are that most of them have habits and behaviors that don't align with the outcome they want. That's it. But we're approaching it with a bodybuilding mentality a lot of the time. And again, I keep referring back to bodybuilding because ultimately when I started in this industry, the only point of information I had readily available to me, we're not talking about scientific studies. I remember doing my dissertation. I had to sit in the British Library and take every single one out individually. Every single study on creatine that I could find, I had to take out individually. I had to retype, all the information from it. I had to type the references. There was no copy and paste. There was no finding PubMed. There was none of this existed. So when I was starting in this industry, probably when you were, my reference point were magazines, largely written by bodybuilders for bodybuilding. Because if you looked at the people that were really good at transforming their bodies, it was bodybuilders. Mm-hmm. So there was this whole thing about, right, you've got to take general public who have this diet that consists of, they have cereal, milk for breakfast, whatever it might be, they have a sandwich for lunch, they have a pizza for evening meal, or fish and chips, or sausage and chips, or whatever it might be. And then we've got to make them now eat porridge, chicken and broccoli, fish and whatever it might be. And we then wonder why they're failing. Because what we've done is we've taken all these habits and behaviors that they're so used to, these palates that they want, something happening with. And we've said, right, you're going to totally ignore all that. You can't socialize with your friends. I remember years ago, I worked with a coach and myself because I needed someone to be accountable to.
Sure.
And the coach would be like, well, you can't go out this weekend. Because, and I wasn't bodybuilding, I was competing. I was just like, I said, so how do I deal with this? He goes, don't go out. Easiest way. Don't go out with your family. Don't eat out with your family. Don't eat out with your friends. So it's the easiest way. I said, well, what about if you tell me what to eat? He goes, nah, easiest way is just to stay in, eat stuff out your Tupperware. The reality is that most people that you will deal with as a coach, certainly, outside of the population, the more extreme populations, they're not going to carry their food around with them. It's not going to happen.
They're not going to prepare most of the time.
They're not going to prepare the food. We know that, again, I talked the other day about millennials and zennials and generational differences, is that if you were born post-1976, chances are you can't cook. Statistics tell us this. Mm-hmm. The average person who was born post-1976 can only cook between 2 and 3 meals. So
sounds about right.
So we've got to cater for somebody who is going to buy nearly all of their food ready-made. So we've got to look at what supermarket.
Is that a stat in the US or is that a world, like North American or European?
I can't recall.
It's got to be an American stat, man. Because it's so fast food centric. Most
stats are.
Yeah. So fast food centric.
And again, it's, I was born in 77. I love cooking.
Yeah.
Me too. So I'm completely out of the. But I grew up in a world where the only way to transform your body and the only way to get in shape was to learn to cook,
do it yourself,
and to eat like a bodybuilder, which is what I did for years. I can't stand tins of tuna now because I used to literally just shovel them down my neck.
Yeah,
and it's because it was this whole thing. You can't make food palatable. If you enjoy it, chances are it's not right. I'm like, well, no, that doesn't really work. So
sometimes making it taste good though is a gateway, right? So like sometimes eating bland food with no salt and no fat is the best way to go because it doesn't kind of open up that gateway to something else.
Yeah, but is that a mentality of us?
Or everybody? Versus, I think it's just a human nature thing. Like if I put a bunch of Splenda on top of your sweet potato with some cinnamon, that sweet taste in your mouth, I think, is a trigger.
A trigger for what?
For more eating. For like
potentially, yeah, because I'm chasing taste, right?
Yeah.
But is everybody not chasing taste anyway? So without us going, look, I'm gonna completely mute your palate, without me doing that, which again I ate for years with a muted palate. I was like, I can't have it. Can't have it.
I can't still to this day. I'm all about texture. Taste is like meh.
Yeah,
it's just texture.
But all part of the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Most bodybuilding food was literally, it was like you've got the hard piece of protein, and then you got mush.
Right.
And it was, and you kind of just ignored it because it was the outcome that you wanted didn't rely on you having that, and you were drilled into you that, you know, the no pain, no gain, you know, it's got to be like this, and this is how it's going to be. And, you know, I didn't eat chocolate for 10 years. You know, I bags of crisps. I was like, no, categorically. You know, and there were things that I grew up eating that I just refused point blank to eat them. But I know that most people don't have that kind of mentality, and they don't have that kind of tenacity to be able to do that. So if I'm looking at Doris down the road, who I'm going to look at what she eats. I'm going to look at the things that she enjoys. I'm going to look at the stuff that ticks the box for her palate-wise. I'm going to look at the taste, the texture. I'm going to look at all those things. And I'm going to say, right, what's the goal with somebody like Doris? Doris has got to be more active. So I'm going to implement the activity. If I'm personal trainer, that's going to happen anyways. So she's now burning more calories. Now I've got to get her in some way to change her behaviors and her habits. Now, me giving somebody who can squat 20 kilos, 200 kilo bar and saying, just keep doing it until you can do it. They're going to, every single day, they're going to fail. Now, most people can't cope with that. Some people do very well. You know, if I just keep giving you something and you keep failing at it, and I know with you, if I said to you, you can't do this, you'll probably go away and prove it wrong. Most people don't have that. Most people don't have that mentality, right? So what I would need is every day they would have to succeed with whatever they're trying to achieve. So I'd send them away with something that would be possible for them to do. So I'd take.
So that's not when they're with you. That's when they're on their own.
So I'd look at their diet, and often, you know, and I always refer back to this. I'd often take a diet plan or a diet log that somebody's given me and give it straight back to them. I'd say, do that again. So you picked everything, you chose everything. There's no excuse whatsoever. You can't come back to me and go, I don't like that. I didn't write that. You did. And chances are they've probably missed some stuff out of it, which means straight away they're in a calorie deficit. Mm-hmm. And straight away they're becoming more accustomed to what they're eating and more aware of what they're consuming. It's like identifying someone's hyperpalatable food. You know, I do this in seminars. I'll be like, look, tell me what your food is that you're overindulgent with. And we get this kind of broad statement where people go, it's chocolate. It's not chocolate. Like, it's chocolate. It's like saying sugar, right? People like sugar. Sugar. It's not sugar. Otherwise, you get a bowl of sugar and you get a spoon and you consume it. It's not sugar. It's just the vast majority of foods that are hyperpalatable and flavoursome and blah, blah, blah will have sugar and fat in them.
Yep.
So now
sugar and fat, right?
So we can now just point the finger and go, sugar's the thing that's making fat. No, it isn't. It's a combination of all those different things. Sugar's in there. You know, so we can't point the finger at sugar, just like we can't point the finger at chocolate. It's not chocolate. Because if I give you a range of chocolate bars, there's some of them you're going to throw in the bin. So don't tell me it's chocolate. It isn't chocolate. It's a certain flavour, taste, texture, ratio, whatever it might be. Yeah. You give me a 40% cocoa chocolate bar, I can't stand it. You give me a 90%, I can't stand it. You give me something in the 70 to 85% range, I'm going to struggle to put that down.
Right.
You know, it's like ice cream, right? It's a particular flavour, taste, texture, whatever it might be. Whereas I can give you another type of ice cream that you will not even touch. So a lot of that is awareness, right? So one of the first things we do with clients is go, right, what are your hyperpalatable? You tell me what they are. Because you know the ones you've got problems with. Then the goal then isn't then to turn around to that person and go, I'm going to ban you from consuming them. Because if you ban something, you make it omnipresent in the head, right? So I'm just going to go, look, there you go. You've just told me what your problem foods are. So next time they go to problem food, now they're fully aware of it. They're like, oh, that's my problem food. Whereas before they didn't know it as a problem food. They weren't aware of that fact. So it's little things like that we'll introduce, and then we'll look at, you know, the diet that I gave back to them. We then bring it back and go, right, so habitually every Friday night you consume this. Now, we need to save a couple 100 calories or 100 calories in that. If we apply that same rule to every single one of your meals, whilst also increasing your output, you're going to start to lose weight. Now, when they start to lose weight, they're not stupid. General public aren't stupid. You ask them in their diet what they should and shouldn't be eating. Most of them know. You know, so what I want is them to turn around to me and go, I don't want to eat that anymore. Not me to tell them they can't eat it.
Tell me a strategy that you implement. So I think science is pretty clear on once you start to lose weight, your ghrelin levels go up. Mm-hmm. Your body senses like, hey, you're losing weight, you need to eat more. So if you lose, say, call it, 10 kilos this week, or the next 2 weeks, and all of a sudden your body starts producing more ghrelin, do you have any intervention strategies for that? Because I know, like, it's unconscious for most people, right? It's like, right. I don't realize that I'm hungry, that I'm more hungry, or that I'm eating more food. I just do. So is it just a matter of having that plan and sticking to it, or is there some strategy you have there for?
There's always going to be the element where somebody's going to get hungry, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's always going to happen. But I want to keep that to a minimum, and I want them to accept the fact that that will probably happen. but we don't want it to be an extreme. So if I take someone who they need to drop their calories from 2,500 to 2,400 and increase their activity to lose weight, I'm not going to drop them to 1,000 calories. That's just stupid. That's ridiculous because we know it's not sustainable. Now, don't get me wrong. There will be people who will sustain it. There will be. Sure. There's always going to be that one client. And this goes back to the PT industry.
Those are the ones that get the before and afters.
Yeah, before and afters. Right. Look, I've dealt with 20 clients. One of them got results. Brilliant. That was the one that told it. And I always say in seminars, I'd be like, I've got a room full of 100 people. Yeah. I'm going to put every single person in this room. You're going to do 20 minutes cardio a day. You're going to do weights. I'll give you all the exact same program. You're all going to eat chicken and broccoli 6 times a day. Who's going to lose weight and get in shape?
2 people, maybe 3.
Yeah, but everybody if they do it.
If they actually do it, yeah.
So it's all to do with the people that do it, right? Yeah. But there's only going to be certain mentalities, people who actually like chicken and broccoli, and there's going to be elements to it. So the strategy there is that when I'm taking somebody who's eaten probably foods that aren't satiated, they're not going to fill them up, right? So there's this version where when people start to overconsume food, typically there's also a pattern that they probably don't eat enough vegetables, right? But I need to give them an excuse to put vegetables in there. Now, one of the best selling points of vegetables to me is the fact that it'll make you feel full. Not the taste, not the texture, not anything else, not the nutrients, because nobody gives a hoot about that. Not initially, they don't. Mm-hmm. People are like, oh, I'm worried about my health, but they're still eating crap. They're not that worried about it. So what I would then do is I'd then start to go, right, we need to introduce probably more vegetation, vegetables, fruit, whatever it might be. We need food that is going to make you feel fuller for longer. I know that sounds really cheesy, but we're going to give you food that makes you feel fuller for longer, and we're going to start to introduce more of this, which is going to fill your plate up more.
How much of that, though, is an actual food volume thing versus a hormonal thing, right? Because I know a lot of people start eating, and you have some people who can stop at a small portion, and then you have some people who can eat a tremendous amount, and that's just a gateway for more, right? So if I give you, let's say I give you 100 grams of rice, and I give me 100 grams of rice, mm-hmm. we're probably going to have, even if it's, we're same body weight, eating exact same foods, we could have a different satiation response, right? So if I'm, for some people that 100 grams of food, or that with the vegetables could still increase their hunger typically, right?
Of course.
So these different kind of phenotypic expressions. Right? I'm just looking for some kind of strategic way to help people.
So let's take that 100
that.
grams of rice, right?
Yep.
I'm going to overcook yours.
Okay.
I'm going to undercook mine.
Okay.
Now, we're going to have a bowl of each. Which one are you going to overconsume? Which one becomes, I'm going to add a bit of salt to yours.
Right.
Mine isn't. Mine's just plain boiling water, been overcooked slightly, or whatever it might be. Now, all of a sudden now that food becomes something that I don't enjoy, isn't palatable, isn't...
Is that the goal, though? Is that the goal, to make it slightly less palatable so that you don't...
No, it's the other way. Is to make it... I want them to enjoy it. I want them to enjoy it because that is something they're seeking. People seek more from food than just nutrients.
That's not... So it's the idea of the Lay's potato chip, right? I bet you can't eat just one as their marketing. So my thought is
Pringles.
like the more...
We have Pringles. Once you pop, you can't stop.
Right. Same thing, yeah. So if someone is consuming a food they enjoy, you'll have some people who can stop and some people who will voraciously seek more.
But we've already identified that as the hyperpalatable food, the one they can't put down.
So we're just going to say...
We're trying to sit somewhere in the middle, right?
Decrease their calories.
So I don't want the food that they hate and despise. I don't want the food that they're going to overconsume. So I'm going to
just eliminate that food they're going to overconsume, or you reduce their calories.
I'm making them aware of it.
Just
going, look, it's it's there. You're going to be aware of the fact that if you start eating that, you're not going to stop. So if I make you more aware of it, don't get me wrong. There's going to be people that will come back and go, yeah, I'm still eating it. I'm still eating it. I'm still eating it. I'm still eating it. But that could then be a matter of they're probably not in the right place to be achieving what they want to achieve.
Right.
Or they don't prioritize it.
What are the primary causes or catalysts for that type of behavior in your eyes? Is it hyper-stressed environment? Is it genetic expression? Is it habit? What are the things we want to start looking at?
I would be speculating if I was to say I knew which one it was. For me to go look, it's a hormonal thing. I don't know that.
Right. I'm
just assuming that, I'm looking at all the potential. Could it be stress? Could be stress. But again, do I have a clear understanding of the stress level of a particular... Remember, most of it's intrinsic, right? Most people don't talk about it. Most people don't know what's
so you're exploring it with a client who comes in. Because that's a really interesting thing for me. It's like, I'm looking at behavior from, an external perspective. But as a coach, I'm looking at causes of behavior.
Yeah, you're looking at patterns, right? Because if we look at habits, right? You look at habit. A habit always has a contextual cue. There's always a reason why somebody does something habitually, and we're not trying to address the habit itself. We're trying to address the contextual cue. We're trying to look at what they did that preceded it, that caused them to do it. So a lot of the time when we're looking at those, we're looking at what is the thing that's causing them to overeat? Is it the taste? Is it the texture? Is it the flavor? Is it the so the rice thing,
environment?
Right? Is the environment? Are they in a social? So when we do a food diary. The most important aspect to a food diary for me isn't the quantity, isn't the food, it's the context in which it was eaten in.
Do you write that in a food diary?
Yeah. So we have a diary where who did you eat it with, where did you eat it, and I'm looking at all those different aspects because they're more important to me than the rest of it. Because now I start to get an idea of the context in which they consume the food in. So if you always, I know that I'm going to be influenced by my friends. There's certain friends I'll go out and I'll drink beer with. Certain friends I'll go out.
Guy, Phil.
I know. Certain friends I'll go
Got
out.
some red wine.
But there's certain friends I'll go out and I'll drink wine with.
Right.
But it's part of it is to do with that social acceptance of the person. Now, if you're not the dominating party there, now I'm the sort of person who'll roll up and I'll be the one who dictates what we drink.
Right.
Not everybody's like that.
Except when you're here.
Except when I'm here. So like, yeah, okay, Ben, what are we drinking?
Red wine.
Yeah. So and you're always led by somebody, and the problem is a lot of the time is we're dealing with people who aren't that dominant part of that party, so they can't control their social situation. So we're trying to control it in the best way, shape, or form. So again, I'll use an example. So on a Friday night, you go out with a bunch of friends. You're not the dominating party. They want to go to an Italian. You go to an Italian every time. Everybody orders pizza. You don't want to be the person ordering chicken salad, right? Because straight away it's going to draw attention to the fact that you're trying to lose weight.
Right.
Chances are you've tried to lose weight multiple times before, which means your four of the friends are now going to ridicule you. And they're going to wind you up and go, oh my God, you're trying to lose weight again, blah, blah, blah. So that person doesn't want attention drawn to them. But how can I do what I need to do, which is save them a few hundred calories? That's all I need to do. At this stage, all I need to do is for them to get starting to lose weight. I'm not bothered about the hormones. I'm not bothered about ghrelin. I'm not bothered about any of that stuff. I'm bothered about them going out, having the social situation that you used to have, leaving all the context in there, the taste, the texture, all those things. But I want them to tick the box that I need to tick right now, which is for them to reduce their caloric intake plus increase their output. Now, as they start to lose weight, their mentality changes. They start to go, hold on, whoa, that pizza's probably not best for weight loss, is it? No, you're right. So can I change it? Now, I never told them to do that. They've decided for themselves. So they almost guide the whole scenario themselves. But as long as I'm getting enough feedback, I'm going to be able to, again, it's like pinpointing that thing. Is it a hormonal thing? I don't know.
Are there any foods that you are against? So like you'll hear the typical nutritionist, and I'm this guy, so don't judge me. Gluten, dairy, grains, soy, corn, gone.
No, I'm not.
You just think if you enjoy it, eat it?
No. If it doesn't cause you any harm, go ahead. But
how do we rationalize that with a client who?
But this is part of that food equation. Is that if I get someone to move in the direction I want them to move in, chances are they're probably going to minimise the amount of dairy they consume, the gluten they consume, the corn they consume. They're going to minimise it all, but they're going to minimise it on their terms, not on mine. The problem is if I start banning foods that maybe aren't causing them problems. If they are causing them problems, yeah, of course they're gone. But I've got to. If I've got Doris, she eats a sandwich at lunch, she has a pizza, she has a whatever it might be, and there's gluten in most of the food that she consumes. Now, if I ban gluten, I'm just joining the dietary bandwagon. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, look, I'm gonna eliminate most of your food choices. You have no idea what to eat for the next few weeks, which means you're going to reduce your calories, which is kind of how a lot of them work, right? If I say to you, I'm going to ban, you take an average Western diet. If I ban wheat, everybody's going to lose weight, not because of wheat. They're going to lose weight because they can't decide what to eat.
Do you not subscribe to the argument that wheat, at least in the presence of glyphosate, is pro-inflammatory and causing leaky gut?
But if I've got a massive overweight person, am I bothered about at that stage? What is the thing that is going to benefit their health the most? Weight loss. Period.
So eat less.
Weight loss. Weight loss is always going to be I'm going to look at somebody like that, and this is just again my perspective, and it's is that what is the most damaging thing to that person right now? If I've got somebody who's morbidly or clinically obese, the biggest threat to their health, their environment, everything there is now is weight. They are overweight.
Overweighing or outweighing inflammation.
Yeah, but what's the thing that's going to bring inflammation down probably the quickest is weight loss. So what do I want to get the ball rolling with? I want to get them moving weight. And what's the thing that's going to motivate them the most? Weight loss.
Right.
What's the thing going to motivate them to change their food choices? Weight loss. So without the weight loss as the instigator for it all, the rest of it just becomes another, almost like a fad, right?
Well, to play the devil's advocate, what if I took away these inflammatory foods? I could potentially improve the way they feel subjectively, right? That maybe their brain fog is better, maybe they feel a little less groggy, maybe their energy is a little bit better, maybe they sleep a little bit better. That leads to fat loss and weight loss.
But somebody who is obese, are they going to notice the difference?
It depends how much of a change you make, I guess, right?
Yeah, but this is about understanding what it's like for an obese person, right? I have an experience of being overweight as a kid, right? I don't have these solid memories of what it was like to walk around inflamed and overweight and stress on my joints and feeling sluggish and lethargic and blah, blah, blah. So do I know the difference? And by reducing the inflammation, somebody who's massively obese, my argument there would be is that do they notice the difference? Because I've seen people who, throughout my entire career, I've had 20 years of dealing with people, I've done, 30, 40,000 PT sessions. I've dealt with a lot of people. And in the obese people that I used to deal with early in my career, I used to do the bodybuilding approach, right? So what I used to do is I used to take gluten, wheat, everything out of it. They didn't notice the difference.
I wonder if there's a difference in region. So arguably, if I'm not mistaken, glyphosate is not legal in the UK. So there may be actually a difference in the quality of wheat. So I can eat wheat in Europe and have no issue. Like if I'm in Italy, I'll smash some pizza.
This again, when I used to work abroad, most of the food was sourced in the US.
Well sourced.
And I used to have really bad problems with bread. I used to make me feel bloated. I used to feel really sluggish on it, blah, blah, blah. So I just chose not to eat it.
Right.
But I could tell the difference, because I came from eating food that was, and up until that point, I hadn't really consumed lots of breads because early on in my journey, I eradicated it just because I knew it was a food I overconsumed. I grew up north. We used to have bread with, we'd have toast for breakfast, we'd have a sandwich at lunch, we'd have an evening meal, and we'd have a side of bread.
Quality wheat at the time, right?
Yeah, better quality of food, but this goes down to literally everything. And let's go back on Doris, right? It's all well and good me turning around to Doris and saying, look, you've got to buy better quality food, but right now her budget isn't great, right? So I've got to look at that as a contextual part of the argument is that I've got to think, is she going to go out there and buy grass-fed steak? If I tell her, she might.
Right.
Is she going to notice the difference? No, she isn't. Physically, there will be a difference. We know that there's going to be positive things happening. We know all this stuff, but is it going to make a difference to her right now? Because the only difference she sees is a hole in her wallet. That's all she sees right now. So although it might not appear very purist and it might not appear, and somebody might say, I've got this morbidly obese client, blah, blah, blah. I put them on grass-fed this, devoid of gluten, they're buying better quality food, they're buying more veg, all the stuff's organic, blah, blah, blah. So the only thing that they will notice is the impact financially, which is another reason for them to stop doing it.
I don't agree with that. So I'll take people and put them on a restricted diet, and I'll take those 5 major things away. And the subjectivity of feeling better is almost immediate.
Right.
And then that's just empowering.
Again,
different demographic, maybe.
Yeah, but I'm also going to play devil's advocate here, is that when you have somebody who starts working with you, they trust you.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. They'll do whatever I say.
They'll do whatever you say. And that is the big argument,
Yeah.
is that the vast majority of coaches that I'm dealing with and teaching to be coaches, people don't trust them. People don't trust them. They don't know enough about them. They don't have a background. They don't have a history. I know that I can go to any client, tell them to do anything, they'll do it.
They can do it, yeah.
They'll do it because they trust me and what I say. Now, if I stuck you in a gym up north and you tried to implement the same strategies that you use, there would be a high failure rate.
You're right. Different demographics. So I guess it's completely dependent.
Because they wouldn't have a clue who you are.
Yeah.
So they don't know anything about your background. They don't know why you've done that. And they'd be like, well, my last trainer banned gluten and banned wheat and banned dairy and banned all.
But I wouldn't do that with. So you're right. It's contextual. So if I went into a demographic like that, I would look for like one lever I could pull, right? And that's the way I approach everyone's transformation.
So what would be the first lever you pull?
Well, it depends what the biggest bottleneck is, right? So it's like, hey, we need to improve your sleep.
So again, let's go right back to massively obese person. Sleep, whatever. They've got shit sleep. Their training's awful. They're inflamed. They've got joint problems. They've got all these different problems. But fundamentally, they're obese. What's your first port of call?
Depends on what they're willing to do. My first protocol is typically like, I just want you to walk when you wake up in the morning.
Right. So your first goal is to get them
Calories.
to lose weight.
Yeah.
Is to get them to lose weight.
Sure.
Now,
Just
if
get them to move.
at the same time you could improve their food choices slightly, so let's say they have
So
peanut
that
butter.
isn't even for weight loss, though, to be honest. That's more for blood flow, energy flow, electron transfer, brain.
But what did they come to you for? They didn't come to you for electron transfer.
But
they didn't come for.
So I'm using that.
Circulation.
I'm using that as a lever to get them moving, to feel better, to then anchor onto something else.
But what did they ask you for?
It doesn't matter what they ask me for. They're asking for a long-term result.
But
right?
Yeah, but
so they're asking me they're asking to trust me with the long-term end result of, hey, I want to lose fat.
This is again going back on what I said to you before. Is that the people already trust you? Is that if
you said if we put in a scenario where I'm not trusted,
but they're not going to trust you. They're not going to trust you. They're going to lose trust and faith very, very quickly. If they've come to you and said, Ben, I want to lose weight, and you go, right, we're going to walk, we're going to improve your circulation, we're going to do all these different things. That's it. And ultimately, you're not going to lose weight for the first few weeks because we're too busy doing all these other things that aren't important.
I don't disagree. I completely disagree. If someone walks in the morning for any amount of time, the way they'll feel for the rest of the day will be different.
Of course.
So that is a catalyst enough to get buy-in psychologically and physiologically to get them to create another behavior change. So it's this stacking of habits, right? So I'm looking like, okay, how do we create one thing that they can do? Even if it's like, hey, I want you to go walk for 10 minutes. But
what's your direction of your habits, though? Remember, they came to you with a goal. What was the goal? The goal was to lose weight. Nothing else.
But ultimately, weight loss is bullshit unless I can change your life, unless I can change your habits.
Of course, but this is what I'm saying is that it's just a different approach. It's the same outcome.
Sure.
But what we're looking at here is that I'm looking at the things they currently do and they're comfortable with, and I'm going to make you feel slightly more uncomfortable.
Right. But I don't even want to change your food yet, right? That's my approach. Is like you do that, you keep doing it. What I want you to do is I want to remove.
But do they want to change their food? They do. So I've got to appease that somehow. They're going, I want to change my food, Ben. I want to change my food.
Well, then we appease it. But it's not my first lever.
And if I don't do that initially, if they come to me for weight loss, they know they're changing the food. Straight off the bat. They know they're changing the food.
Okay, so what's their adherence rate? Like with changing the food, right? So what I'm trying to do is try to create a strategy that creates deeper and deeper and deeper buy-in to me and deeper and deeper and deeper habituation around healthy habits.
Yep.
So like I'm going to go, hey, let's walk in the morning. Hey, let's cut out your blue light after 7 p.m. so you sleep a little bit better. Yeah. If I can make those two things move, their body composition changes without having to look at their calories, right? And then all of a sudden, I feel better. I don't have so much stress and anxiety.
But how does their body composition change by them getting more sleep?
Just definitively by decreasing their inflammation and improving their sleep, they're going to lose body fat. Like depending how bad their sleep is to begin with, right?
Yeah, of course.
Most people who are obese are terrible sleepers.
But I'm going to get more impact from somebody moving more and eating slightly less calories than them sleeping better.
Doubt it.
Yeah?
Doubt it.
Really?
From my experience, yeah. If I can make somebody sleep 8 hours, they're going to feel better. And it's a good 8 hours, a good ratio.
But is that because they're eating less, because they're sleeping more?
Maybe. Maybe. But I think, so we know, science will tell you if someone sleeps less, they do what more during the day? Cheat more on their diet, right? Yeah. They eat more bad calories. So if I can get somebody moving in the morning, get them exposed to some blue light some sunshine in the morning, and allow them to sleep better at night, I know that I believe that I can change their habits more throughout the day. So but that me,
but it's not about whether you believe it or not. It's whether they believe it.
I don't think they need to believe it. I think the feeling of how much better you would physiologically feel from just doing those two things would create a catalyst for I'm just not as hungry.
So I'm going to throw you. Let's call him Dave. Dave was a client of mine. Okay, workaholic, right? And I'm now telling this workaholic, Dave, who's been a workaholic for the last 20 years, I'm telling him he's got to turn all his devices off at 7:00. What does he see? What's the first thing he sees? Is it positive or is it negative?
So I've got a client who makes, I don't know how much he makes, but he sells 1 million pairs of shoes every month on Amazon. Yeah. So you could speculate what he makes. And I said, hey, man, would it be reasonable for you to turn your electronics off 1 hour earlier at night? I'm going to go, what time do you turn them off now? He goes, 9. So let's try 8.
But again, my argument is he trusts you. He's already got the buy-in.
But I'm asking for his buy-in. I don't even ask.
But you already got his buy-in because he signed up with you. He knows you.
No longer a client. So client in the past, now he's calling it. We're friends now. He goes, hey man, I'm having a really hard time losing weight. I'm having a hard time sleeping. His body composition changed. He put on muscle like that from just improving his sleep. And all we did was progressively over 4 week increments brought his blue light exposure down an hour. And then we brought it back. So we brought it back to 8, then 7. Then we put blue light blocking glasses on him at 6. And his sleep went through the roof. His body composition changed overnight.
But then, right. So Peter, the personal trainer from, wherever it might be, right? he's been in the industry 5 minutes. He's been in the industry 5 minutes. Doris came along to him and Doris has said, look, I want to lose some weight, Peter. Peter goes, right, what we're going to do is we're going to turn off your devices an hour early in the evening. Just think about that just for a second.
It doesn't sound like a big lever, but that's not my first lever, right? I'm looking for anything.
No, of course, but Peter's now given her something that looks out the norm, that is a little bit diverse, is a little bit out there, and she's going, not too sure about this.
Yeah, but when she sees a definitive change.
But how long is that going to take? Whereas if I get if I take her, she's not going to feel that though. She's not going to know
subjectively.
that.
How do you know that? Have you ever lacked sleep?
I know that because I've dealt with clients for many, many years, and one of the first things I used to look at was sleep, and my impact it has on them from a perspective of, do they come in satisfied that they're moving in the right direction? No, because
only if it's not a big lever for them. If they're sleeping okay already, we're going to leave it as is, right?
Yeah.
Most people don't, right? Most people wake up in the morning and they feel like shit and they need coffee. If you're someone who wakes up in the morning and needs coffee, sleep is a lever for you.
Yeah, but same thing. What if this guy refused? What's your next lever?
Well, that's a different scenario. Why are we refusing, right? Like if they're refusing.
He's refusing because you're Peter. You're not Ben. You're Peter, who's been in the industry 5 minutes, who's working out of a big box gym in the arse end of nowhere. Nobody knows who you are. You're a young kid. He's a 40-year-old successful businessman. And you're telling him to turn off his devices an hour early.
Well, why is he coming to me at all then? Right? Like if he's paying me for anything.
But this is the scenario that I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with hundreds, thousands of personal trainers in the UK who are new to the industry, who are acquiring clients because people want personal trainers, not them. They don't want them.
You don't want a personal trainer.
They just want a personal trainer. And the problem is that
so you just need to create buy-in. You need to create rapport and trust.
How do you create that buy-in initially with somebody who doesn't? You don't give them diverse things or wacky things. You give them the things that they understand. They're
it's going to be different person to person, but right. But my belief is that the biggest levers are going to be movement and sleep in that order.
Right.
So calories fall further down the list for me. I know as a nutritionist you don't always agree with that, but like I would rather have somebody physiologically feeling better, and they're going to make the decision to eat less calories because they don't have that physiological need to blunt cortisol.
It's still the same. It's still the same outcome. I'm just looking at it in a slightly shorter, more direct, and less convoluted. But it's a less convoluted way because
it's not, man. It's a more sustainable way, is what it is.
But everybody knows that in order to lose weight, they need to move more and they need to eat less. Everybody knows that. It's been drilled down people's throats for.
So I'm looking for a sustainable approach. If I just drop somebody's calories, I know they can't adhere to that.
But why? Yeah, but I'm dropping 100 calories per meal, which means I can take any meal that anybody eats, any meal that anybody eats, and save them 100 calories on it.
But you're making the presumption that people are going to be perpetually conscious of what they eat, and that's not possible.
No, I'm going to be accepting of the fact that the vast majority of people who consume food, they buy it in a packet.
Okay, I'm looking at behavior change and what's causing the behavior in the first place, as I say. So if I know that most people are overstressed and underslept, if I can decrease the cortisol, I can decrease the impulsive eating or the overeating that's associated with blunting this cortisol, which we know if someone lacks sleep, they're going to do. I'm looking to kind of back end their natural desire to decrease the calories.
But they're only overeat. The day that somebody signs up to be coached or look at their nutrition or whatever it might be, one of the fundamental things that they've initially got to do is they've got to do what that person tells them, right? So the overeating thing will only become a factor probably after the first couple of weeks, because for the first few weeks they're going to have the buy-in, right? So what am I going to get or need to do in those first couple of weeks to continuously get that buy-in? So if I was to say to you, and again, we're just throwing ideas out here, is that, so I take Bob. We've gone through the whole name array today. So I take Bob, right?
We're into the North American names.
So yeah, Bob who wears a raccoon on his head. And so, sorry, I've completely lost my train of thought now. So Bob's massively overweight, right? And Bob wants to lose weight. That's what he wants to lose weight. So I get him now to up his activity, some way, shape or form. Doesn't even step in the gym. Just going to get him to up his activity by walking in the morning, like you suggested. I'm also going to take all his foods that he can consistently eat, and everything he consistently eats, I'm going to find a way of trimming a few calories back off it.
You like to do that meal by meal versus like changing one meal?
Either or.
Yeah.
Either or. The problem with changing one meal is I've got to drastically change that meal. But if I can find a meal in his food diary that he's created for me that has no context applied to it, so the easiest way to is to just eat on your own. Mm-hmm. Is that if I don't eat around friends, I eat the very best when I'm sat at home on my own because I make those choices myself. But I can also eat the very worst because there's nobody there to be accountable for, right? Mm-hmm. So I've got to look at those contexts. So I'm going to look at the food diary, I'm going to look at the context in which everything eats, and then I'm going to look at those contextual situations. I'm going to go, can I manipulate the situation? Can I manipulate the outcome? What is he willing to do? I'm not going to go, right, again, use the pizza argument. I'm not going to tell Bob to change a pizza for a chicken salad. That's stupid because we've gone from something that was maybe a couple of thousand calories to now something that's 400. I don't need that kind of extreme level of change. I just need a couple hundred calories trimmed off that, because if I can apply that rule to every single meal that he's got, he's still eating fundamentally the diet he was before. But he's now starting to lose weight. So 2 weeks in, he's been consuming. He's like, wow, this is amazing. He goes, I'm not doing all these harsh things and extreme things I've done in the past, and I'm losing weight. Now, I want you to turn your devices off in the evening. Yeah, sure. Not a problem. I want you to now increase your activity. Now I want you to start to bring down these foods, or these foods that contain this particular ingredient. I want you to start to bring them down again, Bob. Bob's like, yeah, no problem.
I don't disagree with what you're saying in principle. I just disagree with what you're saying in practice. From experience, and again, you've probably trained more people than I have nutritionally. My experience is if I decrease someone's calories without first changing their behavior, they're going to cheat on their diet, and they're going to cheat to an excess to the point that they regain all those calories.
Have you ever, right, I'm gonna pick on your career here. When did you start coaching people?
17.
17, right. And throughout that entire time that you've coached people, did people already know you or know of you and know who you were and what you stood for? And where
No, for the first 10 years of my life, I was nobody.
Right.
First 10 years of my life, so 17 to 27.
And all of these things that you implement now, did you implement then? What was your approach when you were 17? When you were 20?
Well, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? It was just move. So I didn't have the compassion for people. I didn't have the scope of knowledge. So it was just like...
So you trained the hell out of people, and what did you do? You put them on a calorie deficit. You made them eat bodybuilding diets. What did you do?
Probably bodybuilding diets. My first approach was...
Gluten's gone, wheat's gone, dairy's gone.
Not even. My first approach was let's change their first meal of the day. I've always done that because I've seen great adherence with that, because people will typically feel better. And then they know, like, if I just restrict this meal, I know I can get what I want.
It's like making your bed in the military, right?
Right.
Start the day by achieving something.
That was always the way I would start with people and getting them exercising. But this awareness around, like, because I didn't look at it from a lever perspective, right? Now I told you my first two levers for everybody is stress and sleep. If I can improve those, I know I can change behaviors.
But as a 17-year-old personal trainer back in the day, do you think you could get the same buy-in you do now and be able to use the same almost large levers that you're using? Because you're using levers that people don't really understand their levers.
But it's an unconscious thing, right? I don't need to tell somebody I'm changing their stress and their sleep. I just need to say, hey, I just need you to walk. Can you go outside and walk? Like, that's it.
But I trust you. If you tell me to do that, I've already bought into you, and I know who you are, and I know your background, and I know everything about you. 17-year-old kid, I don't know a thing about you. You're telling me to change things that will impact my life, and the only thing, same thing.
But why would you change your diet and not walk? Like, if I said to you, Bob,
I'm not asking him to change his diet and not walk. What I'm asking him to do is do both. I'm saying, look, I'm going to increase your activity, and I'm also going to decrease calories, but I'm going to leave everything about your life pretty much as it was until you start to lose weight, and then you're going to ask me the questions, and then you're going to trust me more. And when you trust me more, I can basically get you to do anything I tell you to do.
Absolutely. And we're doing the same thing, just a different approach.
But you skip that first part of it. Do you know?
Of decreasing calories?
No. You skip that initial buy-in. You
don't
need that buy-in.
Oh.
You don't need that buy-in because of who you are. I don't need that buy-in. I don't need that buy-in.
But I think my best lever for getting the buy-in is letting you feel what it feels like to have less stress and feel what it feels like to have better sleep. Because my belief, and this could be absolutely incorrect, is that 90% or more of the population lives a stressed life, whatever that means to you.
Yeah.
Stress, anxiety, whatever perceived amount of stress is to you.
Can we coordinate what they consume and the context in which they consume it with that stress?
Of course.
Correct. Which is hence why we're looking at the context in which people
But why can't we just change the underlying desire to contextually eat? So why am I contextually eating? Well, because I probably feel stressed, and I'm going into this context to relieve the stress. Why am I going to go have glasses of wine after?
But if I said to you, what context are you eating something in? Nobody's going to go, the context is I'm stressed.
Why not?
But are they
Well,
going?
why do I go after work and drink beers? Why do I go after work and drink wine? Why do I
Do you go?
No, but it's like,
but are you doing it on your own?
well, no, because people will just do it because they want to be social.
Right. So I'm doing it to be social,
So they can forget them. So they're not alone, right? It's almost like I'm choosing to be.
But then this is this buy-in and this trust where I'm going to have a client there, 17-year-old personal trainer. I'm going to have a client who's not going to turn around to me and go, "Oh yeah, I drink because I'm stressed. I drink because it's a Friday night.
I want to be around other people because I don't want to be by myself because I don't want to listen to my brain." But that's the reality.
But then I'm
right?
going to tell you that last bit as a 17-year-old personal trainer. They're going to tell you.
But we know that's the reality. Like, why do we typically choose to go?
The 17-year-old personal trainer doesn't. He doesn't know that's the reality. He's never lived any of that.
Sure.
He's never been stressed.
Sure.
Lives with his mum.
Right.
You know, so we can remember is that the people that I'm coaching to be coaches are young kids. They're not people who get the buy-in.
Right. But I'm talking just in general. If there's a listener to this podcast who's not a young kid, they're 35 plus or 30 plus. Like, what are their levers, right? I agree with the way you do it is great. If someone has the conscious awareness and the willpower to just decrease calories a little bit, they'll absolutely get a result. I believe that unconscious desire to eat more will kick in at some point. If you're in a caloric deficit for long enough, they will binge.
It'll kick in eventually. Won't kick in immediately, right?
I say 3 to 4 days.
Yeah. But over those 3 to 4 days, do I not then need to be appeased with knowing that I'm doing the things that I think are correct? Because remember, when we're dealing with clients, people still want to do the things they think are the right things to do.
Sure.
Irrespective of what we tell them to.
But how are we assessing what they think is the right thing?
They're going to tell you. They're like, so I present a diet to someone or whatever it might be, and they're going to go, it's like giving someone a diet. I give someone a diet, let's say, a prescriptive diet, which you can't do and you wouldn't really want to do. But let's say you give someone a prescriptive diet, which tells you how much food, when, where, whatever it might be. The client turns around to you and says, how long do I have to do that for? Straight away, they've just told you it's wrong. Whereas if I've got the complete buy-in, if I said, Ben, I want you to coach me, you write me a prescriptive diet, give it to me, I'm not even going to dare say that. I'm just going to get on with it. Well,
you came to me for a different reason.
Correct, but I've came to you with the buy. The buy-in is already initiated, so you can get away as a coach with getting someone to reduce their blue light exposure, get them to turn off their devices in the evening. A 17, 18, 19-year-old personal trainer
irrespective of the buy-in, though, I think everyone should. I agree that the buy-in is a very important aspect, but we should all aim to achieve buy-in as a coach, right? Whatever that looks like. If that means like, hey, I'm going to, so I talk to all my coaches about this stuff. It's like, guys, in those first few sessions with a client, you need to own the conversation. You need to assess or create a dominant situation where most of these people coming in to work with the coach typically are very successful. They have maybe more dominant personalities. So as a coach, you have to own that relationship. So you need to create the buy. You need to create the dominance in that relationship so that you have the buy-in.
But surely the buy-in has to revolve around what they want from their session.
Of course, so this is, or what from the relationship.
But straight away, you're giving me things that I didn't want, and I don't associate.
What did you want?
But I don't associate. I didn't come to you to improve my sleep. I came to you to lose weight.
Right.
I would love to improve my sleep. Don't get me wrong, but in my hierarchy of list of things is number one, I want to lose weight. I want to get on a scale.
What if I just tell you, or what if we say, hey, so here's an example. If someone comes to you and says, Phil, I want to put on 30 pounds of muscle or 20 kilos of muscle. You go, okay, we're going to go in the gym and fucking smash you through the wall today.
Yeah.
Is that what you're going to do? No. For someone who comes in who's, maybe not trained all that much, you're not going to go, hey, I'm just going to smash you through the wall today.
So we're talking progressive overload, right?
Well, no, you have to lay a foundation for their ability to do things.
We're going to go, look, what can you do now? And this is where we're going to go in the future. And this is when we talk about diet. What's diet? It's progressive underload in many respects. Is that I've got to look at what somebody currently does and going.
I'm not even talking about progressive overload. I'm talking about someone comes to you who's not an experienced lifter and they said, Phil, I want to put on 20, 30 kilos.
Yeah.
You can't just go into like, all right, Bob, we're going to kick your ass and work as hard as you can. You're like, I need to see what you're capable of doing now. And then I'm going to teach you these foundational skills that you don't have yet. And then we can go and put on muscle. Yeah. So that's what we're doing with nutrition. We're going, hey, man, I know you want to lose weight. But before you lose weight, I need to increase movement. I need to increase your brain's ability to not be stressed.
And this goes back to dealing with coaches who are inexperienced, who are young, who don't have that level of buy-in, who are working a big box gym or whatever it might be.
I think we're just looking at the same thing from two different sides of the
coin.
Of course you're looking at it from like these young coaches who don't have buy-in.
You're an experienced coach who already has the buy-in. So therefore, these kind of strategies are very easy for you to implement because people go away and do them.
So
It's very difficult for an inexperienced, novice coach, brand new coach. And there are things that I do with my clients and did with my clients I would never convey to anybody else. I would never convey to most of the coaches that I ever teach because it won't work for them because their demographic and their client don't trust them in the same way that mine trusted me.
We both absolutely agree that the first step in any relationship, is trust, rapport, and quote unquote buy-in, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to create trust and rapport. And no matter what it is, either it's happening before the relationship begins or it's happening as soon as the relationship begins.
Yeah.
So that needs to precede everything, I think. So if your approach to getting someone to buy in is to get them to lose a few kilos in the first couple of days because you're decreasing the calories.
And this is this argument about, extreme dieting, right? And this is we look at the studies, some of the studies heavily support this, is that if for the first few weeks of dealing with somebody, you drop their calories excessively. So I'm going to put you on 1,000 calorie day diet for the next 2 weeks. If you've got somebody who sticks that out, their compliance goes up.
Sure.
Because they lost weight.
Yep.
Rapidly. Now, the buy-in is to do with the weight loss, which is what they came to you for. But this is, again, I've seen coaches throughout my career where they have a thing that they do, whatever it might be. I remember all the Paul check stuff, things like that, where what would happen is that somebody would come in for weight loss and then all of a sudden that person is doing a bunch of functional coaching, training for them for the wrong goal, the goal that they didn't actually want to because the coach is that way orientated. I remember a girl I used to work with who used to put all her clients, she used to teach them how to do clean and jerks and snatches and blah, 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 because she was an Olympic lifter. But that wasn't what they came to you for.
Right.
They didn't come to you to learn how to do these complex lifts. They came to you to move.
Transform their body. Yeah.
Transform their body. So what we've done is we've now straight away moved the goalposts away from where they are. This is where we see coaches, and this again, in my experience of dealing with coaches from a coaching perspective, is that you see these coaches move the goalposts and then start to create these brand new mantles of what is success. So you'll take a coach who's got a weight loss client and they're not very good at achieving the weight loss and the buy-in and the compliance and everything that we need to do to achieve weight loss. They're not getting that. So what they start doing is they start working on the client doing a pull-up, or they start to work on the client doing a max trap bar deadlift.
Right.
And, that's their achievement. So that you see these trainers high-fiving the client as they've totally ruined their back doing some 200 kilo trap bar deadlift. And because the client's not achieving the goals that they actually came in for, you're giving these new mantles to prove to them that, yes, we're progressing because your trap bar deadlift's gone up, but they wanted weight loss. So we've moved the goalposts away from what they wanted to achieve.
Right. So let's talk about that. So I think it's important when you begin any relationship to establish a target, to establish a goal, which then allows you to establish buy-in, right? Because if I know your goal, I know how to direct my buy-in. I know how to target, like, hey, I'm going to get you. So maybe that's kind of where this semantically is going off, is if someone has a very specific goal, we could approach it in many different ways to get you to that goal. But either one of them ultimately needs to, or any one of them ultimately needs to get to one step closer to this target rather than, some lateral step away from the target. I think that's what the semantics of this conversation needs to come over.
But my point to you is, it comes back to probably the biggest point really, is it comes back to that level of buy-in that you have already got as a coach and a person.
Sure. Well, let's talk about that then. Like how in your eyes does a client or a trainer establish buy-in? Is it exclusively through nutrition? Right?
No.
So okay, let's give some trainers some
buy-in starts with the coach.
Okay, well let's give some trainers some or coaches, whomever's listening, to some tactical approaches to actually getting a greater degree of buy-in from their client.
Right. So again, consistency, right? So as a coach, and I hate to hinge on this sometimes, but ultimately it comes down to results, right? So you start getting results with clients, you start to get a bigger buy-in. Yeah?
For sure.
So the more trust you achieve from other clients, the bigger buy-in you get. So the problem that we've got is that with a brand new PT in the industry, and this is who I'm largely dealing with in the academy, is that these guys have no experience, they have no track record, they have no background of fame, fortune, they're not celebrities, not this, that, the other. So the client is coming to that person and all they see is this jumped up little kid who's got a PT qualification. That's all they see. So we've got to then angle that buy-in, and we've got to angle that trust being developed over time, which is what's going to happen. And this is all about the PT consistently delivering a level of service that the client expects in a professional manner. So everything right now, you even talk about just professionalism, right? You
Of
know,
course.
is professionalism. A level and a degree of professionalism portrayed by a personal trainer will get you a higher buy-in than anything else in the onset, because you are conducting yourself in a way that is what a client would expect. Now, if you're going to come in wearing, shabby clothes, you're not very well presented, you're going to struggle more with that buy-in. So the buy-in starts with the trainer. It starts with a whole bunch of things. It's, do you shake your client's hand as they walk through the door, or just go, "Hi, come on, we're training"? How do you approach that whole thing? Is there a demeanor, a manner to it? And we add that in. Then we've got, how well does the client know you? Are you going to introduce yourself to them? Are you going to tell them a little bit about your background, a bit about yourself, a bit about what, or have they been following you, for example, on social media for a long time, and they've already bought into you because they've never met you before, but they like what you do? And this is, again, you look at your kind of the online aspects of your business. What are you ultimately trying to do with people? Just trying to nurture them to the point that they trust you completely, emphatically, to the point that they will probably in the end buy your product or whatever it is that you're selling. I don't expect a trainer just to go, "Oh, I'm going to go with the academy." I expect them to enjoy what we deliver and what the results we get for people talking about us, word of mouth, over delivery, all those different things, and that then ultimately creates that buy-in. So it starts with a coach, and it starts with them presenting themselves probably in a way that is unexpected, especially for a young kid, is acting professional, acting in a way that that 40-year-old person that you're dealing with starts to create some kind of connection with you. And then that's going to be developed over time. The rest of it is probably going to come across from initially getting results with your clients, and for a lot of clients, this is my kind of argument, is that for a lot of clients, that is just weight loss. It's weight on a scale, whatever way you do it. You look at the buy-in on low-carb diets. What's the buy-in on a low-carb diet? You drop your carbs out your diet and lose weight rapidly. Not really because you're losing fat. You just lose weight rapidly. So the buy-in straight away is
Right.
the weight loss.
So talk to me about that. So talk to me about ketogenic diets, and your approach or your belief around this low carb, high fat trend versus simply calories in and calories out. I'd love for you to go down that
Same
path.
thing. It's a sustainable thing, right? Reality is that actually when we were in Tampa, when I was out in Tampa with you,
Yep.
is that the guy that was speaking was a big person in the field of ketogenic dieting, and the reality is that the vast majority of people aren't going to embrace ketogenic dieting as a lifestyle choice. They're not going to do it forever. Now, with respect to getting results quickly for a lot of people, yeah, there's massive support for large elements of it. It's hugely protein sparing. It's great with certain conditions. People are going to buy into it very, very rapidly because you get rapid weight loss. It's from an energetic perspective for a lot of people. It removes foods that will typically make them feel sluggish, might cause them to overeat because of the satiety levels of protein. For a lot of people, it helps them organize and reorganize their diet. With respect to it being a long-term dietary strategy, I think it's not going to work for many people. With respect to getting the ball rolling with a lot of people, I think it's a great tool if it's used in the right context. You've similar sort of thing. You've got to have that buy-in, but you've got to have somebody to have that desire to eat in that fashion. Ketogenic dieting for me, easy.
Yeah.
It's not a problem, because I love eating meat. I love fats. I love, I like that approach. It's not an issue to me. But Joe Public out there who is probably going to remove a lot of foods that they like to indulge in. It's a bit like a competition diet, right? You get these competitors that are either good with it or they're bad with it, right? Where they develop almost like a disordered eating pattern off the back of contest dieting.
True,
right?
yeah. I think everybody does, to be honest.
Yeah, but some are extreme, to the point that people are listing foods they're going to overconsume on and overindulge in the second they step up stage. They've got a box of donuts ready to go and they will smash through that, right?
Yeah.
And that's the patterns that we've almost got to watch out for, especially with something, again, like ketogenic dieting, because there's going to be a point where they stop doing it. I'm concerned about what happens when they stop.
Now, you're a very well-read, well-researched trainer, and also kind of have become a very renowned nutritionist. Which do you prefer teaching?
Business.
I love it.
If there was one element of what I teach now that I would love and continue to, is business, because I think there's so many elements of business that overlap into what we do as coaches on the gym floor and what we do from a nutritional standpoint.
It's funny how that evolves, right? It's the same thing for me. It's like
massive.
I love training. Okay, I got that figured out now. Like, okay with nutrition. Now business is just this new frontier. I think that's always the growth mindset.
So many of the aspects that you apply to business apply so much to somebody's nutrition and somebody's, where the outcome of the things that we consistently do and the things that you consistently do in business create the outcome that we ultimately want, which is a better quality of life for us and the people that surround us. And, I talk about quality of life an awful lot, and I talk about this in nutrition and I talked about it in training, is that something like powerlifting, I was a powerlifter for many years, and ultimately when I look at the quality of life that powerlifting for 20 years is going to create me, it's going to be pretty horrendous. The outcome is probably not going to be good. I'm going to be in a position where I am going to cause myself problems. And there's a lot of powerlifters now that are openly talking about this. The guys from Elite, the guys from West Side, a lot of them are talking about the fact that what they did for 20 or 30 years has now damaged them in a way that their quality of life is diminishing fairly rapidly. So I'm always looking at that as I want people to have a quality of life that they are chasing. And nutrition, it's the same sort of thing, and kind of what we've been touching on and talking about, is that I don't want people to remove social context from what they do, because the social aspect of somebody's life is a massive part of it. Being happy is a massive part of somebody's life, and food for a lot of people plays a massive role in that. Now, if I make them very unhappy with what they eat, all of a sudden I've removed a large element of their life. If they're very introverted and they don't have huge social circles and blah, 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 hey, ketogenic dieting might work for you,
Right. It's easy to eat on the road, though. Like that ketogenic diet, I make the argument of like it's so much easier to do than a bodybuilding diet.
Yeah, because it has a basic set of rules, and those
but it's very easy to find meat and fat. It's never easy to find a clean carbohydrate.
And also it becomes a little bit problematic. I think in the US it's a little bit easier to do that.
To do a keto?
Yeah. Here it's not so easy. It's just to find decent sources of protein just on the hop. It's not a bit more than usual, but it's certainly in the US, when I worked in the Bahamas for a long time, and my access to ketogenic foods was easy. So I did a keto diet whilst I was there. Mm-hmm. I was there for like 2 months, and I was like, well, keto, it's easy.
Yep.
I can maintain this. And at the time, a lot of the food that was presented to me was very indulgent, the sort of food. I love food. And I was like, my easiest way of avoiding this is just give myself a basic set of rules and follow them, which is what I did.
Dude, I'm so glad you brought that up. Talk to me about that. So a basic set of rules. This is something that's you said in kind of passing and is so valuable that I suggest everyone do for themselves. Like a client comes to me and it's like I let them dictate it, but I'll go, well, where are all your triggers and how do we create rules around that, right? Like an example would be if I say, Phil, I don't drink, and we go to dinner. If I don't drink is not the same as, well, I don't think I'm gonna have one today, right? So if you set that basic set of rules, like I don't eat gluten, that's one rule for me. Okay, well, that's a very easy rule for you to apply to your life.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what you said as your rules, if there is some, and how you suggest people begin that.
I want the rule to be there for the reason that they understand it to be there. So if we look at, for example, the gluten thing, right? Now, the gluten thing is, it's not necessarily sketchy.
I should say I don't eat gluten in North America, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But let's do quality food then. Maybe that's probably a wrong angle to go at. Anything that we eradicate, just anything in general, right? So a basic rule of I'm going to cut sugar out of my diet, right? You apply that to any Westerner, they're going to lose weight.
Right. Yeah.
But they need to understand why they're losing weight.
Why?
They need to understand why that.
Because it's just the calorie thing.
Yeah, it's a calorie thing. In the onset, we know it's the calorie thing. Don't get me wrong, there's a whole bunch of other things that are going to happen, right? But ultimately, that is the big pivotal thing. You apply the same rule to gluten. The biggest thing that they will do is they will change their food choices to foods that they're unfamiliar with. You do it in the UK, you look at a typical Western diet, you go, right, I'm going to ban bread. Most Westerners, certainly in the UK, will eat a lot less food because they don't know what to put things in.
Right.
They're like, all of a sudden, they're stumped. They're like, right. And what happens is they'll lose weight and then they'll figure it out. They'll work out what they can replace it with.
Right.
And when they work out what they can replace it with, they go back to eating what they were eating before.
Absolutely.
Because that's that regulation thing, right? So those basic set rules need to follow some kind of pattern, but we also need to, in my view, we also need to explain what those set of rules are there for. What I don't want is somebody going away and telling everybody that I have a massive gluten intolerance and I'm allergic and this, that, the other. No. You lost weight because we changed your food choices. Now, if you have conditions and you have problems and you have issues with them and there's inflammatory, whatever it might be, I need to prove to them that actually exists. Otherwise, I'm just speculating. I can assume, I can go, yeah, we take gluten out, your inflammatory markers.
How much do you think gluten plays into the inflammatory markers that people have?
I'm going to answer this in the way that I would typically answer it. I actually don't care. Not at this stage.
Why?
Because for a lot of people it's minutiae. It's an irrelevant kind of.
Inflammation is irrelevant?
It's not irrelevant, but it's in the grand scheme of the things that I'm concerned about. If I'm dealing with a professional athlete, I'm concerned. Because that inflammation is going to cause them problems.
Sure.
So
overeating in and of itself will cause inflammation too.
I'm therefore then concerned. Average person wandering around, blah blah blah. If gluten makes them feel like shit, I'm concerned. If gluten doesn't seem to make them feel like shit, because again, how do we market this? Am I bothered about it? No, I'm not that bothered about it. If there's a large frequency and volume of it in their diet, am I concerned about it? Yes.
How much are you looking at blood markers when you're doing somebody's nutrition plan?
Right. Again, I'm going to play devil's advocate with respect to the people that we deal with. The accessibility to bloods. What are we actually going to do once we've read them and we've interpreted them and we've done something with them? Is that the vast majority of coaches that I deal with from the academy's perspective, they're never going to have access to bloods.
Are you not doing any more clients yourself? No. It's all academy stuff. Yeah.
No. So the access to bloods and the availability and the scope of practice in which the vast majority of coaches...
so complex.
Yeah.
It's a 10-year course itself.
And this is where, should I be coaching coaches to delve into those markets, which I used to. Don't get me wrong.
But you're a high level.
I used to, but it's, again, it became that thing where I've got a load of bloods back. Some things are wrong. Now what am I going to do?
Mm-hmm. Study it for the next 5 years. That's really what it is. So, for me, I look at 10 to 12 markers, and these are my kind of prime movers that indicate something for me. And if they're way skewed, especially in combination, then I'm going to start to dig deeper, right?
So let me go back to your clients, but how much would your clients pay for a set of blood tests?
I don't know. I don't ask.
Right. But again, this is when we talked about the buy-in before.
Sure.
Problem you got with a 17-year-old coach is that all of a sudden, a coach who charges £25 an hour isn't then going to send the client off and go, you're going to spend £200 and get a blood test.
A trainer needs to do that. I'm just saying you in general, of course, as a coach.
Yeah. So my answer was based on that premise that the vast majority of coaches aren't good. That's why I think it's irrelevant.
It's way too complex.
It's irrelevant because there's nothing we can do.
But in my world, I'm not looking at 17-year-old or 25 or 30-year-old coaches. I'm looking at performance optimization at the highest level, right? What does it look like to be optimized? That's what I'm looking like. So if Phil comes to me and says, Ben, I want to live to be 1,000 and
if I've got somebody at that level, I'm outsourcing in a ridiculous fashion.
Yeah.
I've got physios, I've got practitioners, I've got blood people, I've got medical teams, I've got the works, I've got everybody, where, I did a performance thing with an elite rugby player and he actually stayed with me and we had a mattress built for him, which we could sweat and, kept his body temperature at certain levels. We had, there was all the electrics to the room were turned off. There was no electrics, anything allowed in the room. He was, the blue light thing wasn't an issue because he wasn't anywhere near devices from 6 p.m. onwards. He slept in a tent, in a hypoxic tent. We did and we're talking, this is nearly 15 years ago now.
Right.
We did everything that could optimize performance because what we did, the whole experiment was, and it actually got pulled short by the club. The club weren't comfortable with it because it was being heavily publicized online and blah, blah, blah. So they were like, hold on, well, now every player we've got is going to ask to do this. And the project was to take this guy in his off season, which is very, very short, and get all the things that the coaches would want. So you take an NFL player off season and they have, I don't know what an NFL off season looks like, but let's say they've got 6 weeks, right? Coach turns around to the trainer and goes, I want them to be X amount of pounds heavier. I want them to be X amount faster. I want them to be X amount leaner. I want them, and then you're like, as a coach going, whoa, so which one do I do first? So what we did is we took all those things that he wanted from his player, and we took this really short off season, which I think we had about 10 weeks. And I said, I'm going to use every tool that we've got. You know, he would sleep in compression garments. We had these compression garments built from him. BSC did them. Yeah. And we had all this stuff. We had access to blood tests. He was getting saliva testing every day. We did the works with him. And the progress on him was incredible. And after 4 weeks, the club rang us up, the head coach at the club, and said, I want my player back. And his only rationale was, you know, I just want him back. That was it. I want him back. I don't want him doing this anymore. And we'd put tens of thousands of pounds into this. We had sponsors, we had everything, and it was this massive project. And that was optimizing human performance. But
that's the stuff I'm interested in.
Yeah, but so am I, and I've always been interested in. But the fact is, the vast majority of my clientele that I ever dealt with are going to be the 99% of people that people are dealing with, and gluten, blue lights, you know, wheats, you know, blood markers, blah blah blah. For the vast majority of them, it's not that they're not accessible and they're not useful, but in the grand scheme of where they are now, is it going to make that much difference at this particular moment?
Right. Are you concerned with someone's environment impacting the way their body utilizes food?
Not really, no. Environment, expand on what you mean
everything.
By environment.
So everything from your light exposure to your... Yeah. So everything from light to being outside, to breathing air, to breathing toxins and pollutants, to literally all the things.
Right. All the things so I'm going to look at the things that I can change and the things I can't change. Right. So breathing pollutants. Somebody in Central London works in Central London. Can't change it. You know, I could look at ways of minimising it, but then is that going to put them into a level of being socially awkward or uncomfortable or whatever it might be? You know, it's a bit like. You know, you wear the glasses, right? The blue light glasses, but wear them fairly permanently, right? You wear them a lot.
Only after 6 p.m.
Yeah.
If I'm going out driving or something.
Maybe it's because the vids, I've seen you in like your vids and stuff on social media, and obviously I have no perception of what time you film that. So somebody wearing them, right? You wear them because you're comfortable wearing them. Now,
no, because I'm more concerned about my life and what somebody else gives.
Yeah. But you take the average person wandering around. It's like carrying your food around. Let's go carrying your food. Easy one. So I'm going to get you to carry your food around in Tupperware in a cool bag, and you're going to carry it around with you all day, every day. The issue isn't that they don't want to do it. The issue isn't that they can't do it. The issue is that they feel socially awkward doing it.
Terrible is that, though?
But it's not about being terrible. It's about that fact that that person feels uncomfortable all the time. It's a bit like, you know, opening your food on a piece of public transport, right? Everybody's comfortable unwrapping a McDonald's.
Well, that's the exact conversation that I was going to. It's like, why is it socially acceptable?
It just is. It is.
Yeah, but shouldn't someone then who cares about their life and their body be confident enough to embrace and say, yes, but
we're not dealing with people who are confident. We're not.
But why can't we have that conversation with them and let them open up their eyes and say,
we're not dealing with people who are confident. We had this, chat before. Is that there are certain things that there's people in my life that I would love to be able to just let them get in my head just for a minute and realize what I see of them, how confident I am in them. Like business, when I deal with people in business, I have more faith in them than they have in themselves.
Right.
I'm like, I just look at them and go, that is just gross potential. They are like, they're negative Nigel. They're like, nah, not so much. And I want to give them a shake. But ultimately, people aren't like that. And what we're going to remember is that people aren't like us. People aren't like, we won't be having this conversation if people were like us.
I don't agree with accepting someone's poor reflection or poor interpretation of themselves. Like, I think as a coach, it's our job to...
I'm talking about degree of making somebody uncomfortable. Right? So...
Right. But why shouldn't I as a coach be confident enough in my abilities to say, hey, you need to be confident enough in yourself to sit down at a table somewhere. And I'm not saying like, hey, you're going to have dinner or you're going to a wedding or something like that, like different. Like, but if you're going and you're sitting in your lunchroom, why the hell wouldn't you take out your Tupperware?
Yeah, right. So because it's a socially awkward thing. It's awkward for them.
Great.
Is that it's making that person stand out like a sore thumb.
Good.
If you've got somebody who's massively overweight,
right,
they don't want to draw attention to that because they've failed at that multiple times.
But they need it. They need accountability.
They do, and I like that. And totally, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. But in reality, the fact is that person that you've just made that person feel uncomfortable on a daily basis in multiples of scenarios.
Good.
Which now, yeah, great, but is that going to cause them to crumble? And is it going to cause them to stop doing what they're doing because they're
Or
like,
get strong enough to actually change.
yeah, but it's a pipe dream.
I don't agree.
I genuinely think it is.
I think the only way to make somebody change is to make them uncomfortable enough to
uncomfortable.
change.
Yeah,
Like if you're
I
50
agree,
pounds
totally.
overweight, take your fucking shirt off.
Yeah.
Walk outside. Right? Get
Yeah.
up. I mean, it's the only way, man.
But that doesn't work for everybody. Like what we talked about before is that I can tell you that you can't do something, you'll go and prove me wrong. It's that same kind of mentality. Is that what we've got to remember is that the vast majority of people that we deal with, and I talked about this yesterday about coaches, is that they come from a point of insecurity. They come from a point of being they're not confident about themselves. They're insecure. They feel socially awkward. They feel socially inept.
But as long as you live inside this bubble of insecurity, you can never change.
Of course, but we're not going to change that overnight by forcing someone to do something.
But the only way to change it's almost like is with pain.
Yeah, but it's almost like a military approach. Is that I'm not going to get, I could get somebody who's massively overweight and say, right, take your shirt off, walk around Mayfair.
And those are the people that will change. 95% of the population
What about
will
the
never
people
change.
what about the people who aren't willing to do that right now because they're not confident in themselves?
Do it anyways.
And then what? And break them because what they're going to do is they're going to walk around Mayfair and people are going to point and people are going to torment them and people are going to tease them and then they're going to be like,
and then when they see them in 3 months,
this is the same shit that I dealt with when I was 10 years old and now you've just put me right in front of the firing line again. And it didn't work then. It didn't work. It didn't work when I walked around at school and people tormented me and teased me and blah blah blah. And that same mentality where you go, yeah, they need that. Yeah, they might, but that will break some people.
It will break some people,
and it will make other people.
But it'll also make them stronger.
Well, it doesn't always work like that.
I believe it does.
I think it's
the type of thing where it's either going to drive them into a deep depression, or it's the only thing strong enough to make them change.
And I'm not prepared to take that risk with a lot of people. Where I'm not going to put you in a position where I compound failure because otherwise all the diet stuff and the nutrition stuff we've been talking about is completely futile because we're talking about behaviors, we're talking about habits. I might as well just tell people exactly what the equation is that they need to do. I'm going to say, you go away and do that because you need pain. I'm going to give you a bodybuilding diet. I'm going to send you away with the bodybuilding diet. I'm going to tell you need to go to the gym 5 times a week and you need to spend an hour in the gym at a time and you need to do
Don't agree with that.
40 minutes cardio.
I think they need some type of disturbance. They need to get disturbed.
But are we not talking about the same thing? We're talking about the level of uncomfortable I'm prepared to make someone.
That doesn't necessarily mean that I need to eat a bodybuilding diet and train 5 times a week.
No, but it
just means I need to be disturbed enough to take continuous action.
I know that I could make you feel unbelievably uncomfortable before I break you. But I know with Dave over there that I make him feel slightly out of that box of comfortableness he's in.
But maybe
he's going to break.
Maybe. Or maybe you give him just enough going like, holy shit, I can't believe I just did that. I'm going to do it again.
But that's what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm getting at. Is that I need to put them to a point where they still achieve and they still accomplish. They still get what they want out of it. But at the end of the day, they still succeed.
I think it's the same scenario as you just said with a diet. If you put someone on a massive caloric deficit for a few weeks and they get a whole bunch of weight loss, rather than putting them in a small deficit, it's the same scenario, right? It's like if I just throw you in the deep end and I go, hey man, we're going to do something that makes you very uncomfortable. And again, one example, like putting someone out in the public with their shirt off is obviously just a ridiculous example, but like making them do something that allows them to experience pain is the only way to experience change. Or the fastest way to get change. And you notice, and I'm confident you'll agree in this, is 95% of people fail at this journey, or they succeed and then revert back because they don't have enough behavior change or enough psychological desire to change.
But this is this degree of uncomfortable. If I make someone exceptionally uncomfortable, they're not going to sustain it because we're asking them to change behaviors in a polar way. We're going, right, Dave, you're going to take that pizza that you ate on a Friday night, and now you're going to eat chicken and salad with no dressing on it. That is too much.
No, that's not the same. That's not the same. Because that's a physiological response rather than a psychological response. A physiological response
it's a psychological response.
No, if I put you in a caloric deficit of 1,000 calories a day, that's not a psychological response.
Let's look at psychologically let's look at what Dave wants from the pizza. It's not calories.
He wants to mute his stress.
No,
that's a physiological response.
Doesn't want to mute his stress. Dave wants to eat the pizza because he's in a social environment with a bunch of his friends. He wants taste, he wants texture, and he wants to enjoy it. And I've just removed all of that psychological aspect of that food from him. He wants to enjoy his food, which is psychological, right? It's not physiological. There is a physiological edge to it, but we know
I
that,
don't agree.
that somebody who's obese.
I think you're actually.
We know that somebody obese is their dopamine response is muted, right? So he's chasing his tail.
Yeah, but he's still blunting a cortisol response.
Yeah, but he's still chasing his tail because he's still never going to get the gratification from that pizza that he used to because he's overweight.
Yes, he will. Because
why?
Because they're so inflamed and so cortisol driven that we'll give them a serotonin response to block the cortisol, right?
Right. So I give him the chicken salad. What does Dave wake up on? So Dave wakes up on Saturday morning. He's eating the chicken salad the night before.
But that's a different response.
All of his mates tore the hell out of him because he made it very clear to them that he's trying to lose weight again. So Dave's had it ripped out of him. So he wakes up on Saturday morning with his mates still texting him, ribbing him about the fact, oh, you're still trying to lose weight, Dave. You're still eating the chicken salad and drinking water and blah, blah, blah. Now, Dave's contented with all of that. Now, what has Dave got out of it? Dave isn't waking up going, oh, my God, I feel less inflamed.
If I give him the same number of calories from a healthy food, right? So I'm not talking about putting him in a caloric deficit. Give him a chicken salad. It's a different scenario.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Anyways, we're going down a path of semantics here.
Yeah, but my point is that there's more to food than just calories. Which is
what
you're telling me.
But I believe the physiological habituation of these things happens from your a young age, or whenever this habit begun. Nobody goes, I want to go to pizza because like maybe when you're young, you go, I want to eat pizza when it tastes good. But it becomes this type of scenario as you age, where you're eating because it makes you feel. So when I eat, or when a human eats, it's either because I'm hungry and this food will make this pain of hunger go away, or I eat because I have some other physiological feeling in my body, and the feeling that I get from food is a net positive result than the negative feeling I had before. So if I'm eating because I'm binge eating or because I have a bad habit of eating, it's because I'm getting a net positive change in my physiological state in that second. So if I have a beer, right? There is a habituation that happens that I learned to like the taste of the beer. But when nobody starts drinking beer because they like the taste of it, they like it because of the state change that happens. And they become addicted to the state change, which then leads to a habituation around the flavor. Oh, I actually like this. So I associate this taste in my mouth with this better feeling that I get than I had before. So I come into this room and you and I sit down and I have this slight level of anxiety. I don't really feel really good. I have one beer or one piece of pizza, and all of a sudden my body feels just a little bit better. It's an unconscious feeling. I don't even realize it's happening, but I feel a little bit better. And then if I have another pizza, I feel even a little bit better. So I have a net positive physiological state change.
Of course. But then you're countering the argument that you had before, where you're saying, look, I'm eating a beer and a pizza and it's making me feel good. Now, is that feel?
But why is that happening? It's the feel good is the net blunting of the stress.
But what about the taste? So the taste has no impact apart from
the the taste is only impactful because you're associating it with blunting the stress. So if we created a different food choice that was blunting the stress.
So if I gave you a food that you didn't like, but it will still blunt the stress,
why don't you like it? So
it's still going to blunt the stress, though. We know that physiologically.
But why don't you like it is the question. So
because of the taste.
No. It's an association you have from the past. So if I give you when you're 4, 6, and 8 years old a food that blunts your stress, or an internal coping mechanism that blunts your stress, I can get you addicted to that internal coping mechanism because it's the how you learn to cope with stress. Right? So I have coping mechanisms. It's internal, it's external. So external being alcohol and food and drugs and sex. Those are external coping mechanisms. An internal coping mechanism, let's say breathing or reflection or meditation or love. Right? So if I give you a positive internal coping mechanism or an external coping mechanism when you're young, that's a positive one. You can learn to associate that with the state change, and thereby when you get older, that's your positive state change mechanism rather than. So when you're a kid and you're acting about and your parents are pissed off at you, what do? They put you in front of the TV or they give you bullshit food. They go, here, eat this lollipop. It'll make you shut up. And then all of a sudden you're associating sugar with changing the state change. And then as you get down the path, now I'm 40 years old, and all of a sudden I'm craving sugar when I want a state change.
So is the solution to this then, instead of
stopping the stress,
is rewarding kids with shit food, we reward them with good food? But
it's not a reward. So parents are trying to just tell, like if a kid's acting about and they're being a little bit.
But if I say to you, look, Ben, if you achieve this, little young 10-year-old Ben, and I'm saying, look, Ben, if you achieve this, I'm going to give you a bag of sweets, right? What happens if I say, if you achieve this, Ben, I'm going to give you a bag of broccoli? We remove the association with the outcome. So I'm saying to you, your reward is vegetables. And then every time you want some vegetables, I'm going to tell you no. So now we're starting to play on almost like reverse psychology, right?
Yeah.
Where I'm saying, no, you're not allowed that, so therefore you want it. You're like, why can't I have that?
Right.
And this is why people try drugs and
Sure.
whatever it might be, because they're not allowed to. There's a taboo element to it. There's an aspect of you're not allowed to. You see it around London. You have a wall with a sign which says no graffiti, covered in graffiti. The wall next to it, there's no sign on it. There's no graffiti on it either. Keep off the grass. People walk on the grass because they're curious. They're like, why does it say keep off the grass?
I'm going to put a sign that says walk on the grass.
Yeah. So it's that reverse psychology aspect to it. So then all of a sudden now we're going, are these and we're getting into massive, complex, huge behavioral, psychological depths here that we're talking about. Yeah, of course, it's epic. But we're talking about scenarios where you could actually just flip them completely on the head and go the other way and say, you're saying that the only reason I eat the pizza is because of an association that I have with the pizza. But I can eat a food that I've never consumed ever before and still feel great after it. But I have no association.
Well, because of the what? As you said earlier, it's the salt, the sugar, and the fat. It's the mouthfeel that will create that blunting of the response. Either you're going to blunt ghrelin or you're going to blunt cortisol, right? Both.
Yeah.
So,
but also I could also leave that food without, it's like the sweet thing, right? Where people consume a savory food and then their association is that after the savory food, they have to have something sweet to finish the meal with.
Yeah.
And that becomes a pattern of behavior, right? Yeah. It becomes a pattern of behavior. It's not a requirement. It's not a physiological requirement. But is it a psychological, requirement? Or is it because at that point, everything's been blunted. So we know that
completely psychological.
So now all of a sudden it just becomes a behavioral thing. It's just a behavioral pattern because you don't need any more calories. Your glycogen level's cool. Your ghrelin's cool. Everything's happy. Cortisol, blah, blah, blah. Everything's cool, but you're still going to eat it.
Right.
Why? Because you love the taste of it. Or is it the sugars and fats you're chasing again? But you've just had a load of sugars and fats in your savory
aspect. Or is it because you're in a caloric deficit from knocking down calories?
Are you? But if you look at the patterns of people who overeat, they overeat for a multitude of reasons. But in amongst that, there isn't this thing that regulates and goes, stop eating. Which then we start to get into hormonal aspects.
Resistance.
Yeah, so leptin resistance, but also the fact that, again, we talk about the dopamine response, right? We know the D2 receptors downregulate obesity, blah, blah, blah. Now, that person who used to get that gratification from a Haribo now has to eat an entire pack to get the same kind of satisfaction. But then eventually, they're chasing the tail. It's like drug addiction, right? I hate to put them into the same kind of box because they're totally different things in many respects. But what happens with drugs is that people they need more of the same thing to get the same outcome because receptors downregulate. Mm-hmm. So when we start to get into receptor downregulation, now all of a sudden we've got this obese person who has a higher response to the smell of food. So we know that as well. We know that they smell food. Their desire to consume that food is way higher than somebody who's lean, right? So we've got that. So they're contending with that. Not only they're contending with that, but also they're obese, which means their dopamine response is downregulated, which means they need more food to get the same kind of satisfaction from a physiological perspective, psychological perspective, kind of crossover, right? But then we've also got the fact they're obese, which means that if they're obese, chances are they've probably got a decent level of insulin resistance. If they've got a decent level of insulin resistance, again, don't want to get into too much detail here, but if they get into a decent level of insulin resistance, we know their peripheral circulation is damaged. If their peripheral circulation is damaged, chances are if they're a man, there's going to be dysfunction where there shouldn't be, which means that they get no gratification from sex. Their desire, again, maybe from a Neolithic perspective or however you want to look at it, but their desire to procreate, or they've got, their desire for chasing, people of the opposite sex or the same sex or whatever their desire is, that's muted. We know that because their sexual drive is way lower than it should be. Their testosterone levels are low, their estrogen levels are high. We've got this myriad of things. Now, all of a sudden, we've got an obese person who really... The grand factor is that obesity has caused all this. So for me, I'm looking at what is the thing that we need to reverse the fastest to get the best outcome. What's going to bring the testosterone levels back up? Probably weight training and losing weight. Forget everything else, fancy supplements, whatever you want to call it, apart from, outside the box. But we've got all these different things that are going to they're going to get more satisfaction from food if they lose weight. They're going to get a better response from food if they lose weight. They're going to get a better ghrelin response. Their insulin's going to be managed better. They're going to get better peripheral circulation. Now, all of a sudden, they've got all these things that they get some satisfaction and pleasure from. We're talking about big obese populations here. is that they're not getting pleasure from anything apart from food. And we know that pleasure response from food is being muted. So when I look at the population that the vast majority of coaches are going to be dealing with, what is the first thing that this person needs to achieve? In my view, beyond anything else, it's weight loss.
Sure.
And
Absolutely.
it goes back at that initial thing. And however we instigate that, whether it's through, sleep improvement, whatever it is that we're doing to achieve that, as long as we're accomplishing it. But again, going back on kind of what you were saying is that my big argument for you is that you already have that buy-in. So you can use these more advanced techniques or these methods that are a little bit outside the box and a little bit where people are going, whoa. You telling me to turn off my devices at 6 o'clock ain't going to achieve weight loss. And that's the instant reaction they're going to get. Whereas for you, you can tell them to do that and they'll go, I trust you.
Right. Or if I just have an explanation as to why.
Yeah, but it has to be a pretty damn good explanation if they don't know who you are.
Right.
So the 17-year-old kid's going to need some whopping great.
Well, I would hope they
belting.
wouldn't give a suggestion without a good understanding.
They're going to have to, have a belting reason and rationale, and it can't sound too out there, because if it does sound too out there, the person's not going to do it. So it's that different level of who is the coach, where the coach, how established are they, what's their background, what's their buy-in level, what's their this, that, the other. And ultimately, when we look at coaches are expected to give people caloric reductions. They're expected to get people moving more. So those are the two things that we're always going to focus on. And this, certainly from my perspective of coaching coaches, that's always the two things that I'm going to focus on because of that fact. Now, if I went back into the coaching environment, they're not the two things I'm going to focus on, because I'm a respected coach and people know who I am and people will trust me. I'm going to approach it from a completely different angle, probably every time with a different person in a different way.
Right.
Because of that. But I'm going to do that because of my experience. Whereas if I take, general trainer who's just qualified, really your goal is to get people to burn more calories and get them to consume slightly less. That's really your ultimate goal. How you go about doing that, it doesn't really matter in many respects. But there are ways which may fail you, but you're only going to know that through trial and error. So you could drop them onto a 1,000-calorie a day diet for a couple of weeks, see how that works. Some people it will work with, some people it won't. But what makes you a great coach is the fact you can assess it and go, that didn't work, and this is the reason why. And I understand why that didn't work. And you could do I'm going to reduce your device usage.
Sure, later
some
down
people it'll work.
If it's a lever for somebody, right? If they're not sleeping well, or if it's a bottleneck, I should say. Like if they're sleeping well, man, keep it. Like I don't care. If you feel good in the morning, energy's good, fine. But like for most people, that's not the case. Like I would argue that that's a huge lever for people sleep and stress. And if we can address those,
and the blue light thing as an example, just to put my take on it, is that I started using blue light glasses because I spend a lot of time in front of the screen, and I use them all day. I don't use them just in the evening.
You use red ones or like just white, or what are they?
Just the slightly tinted blue ones.
Yeah.
And I use them all day. Because what would happen with me is that if I sat at a computer between, typically from 5 a.m. up to about 2 p.m., at that point, my eyes, I couldn't.
You need to acknowledge though, that the rest of your body is also acknowledging all that blue light. So trying to balance out the spectrums is important too, right? Getting some infrared.
And even, the current stuff on like UV,
sure.
And blah, blah, blah.
Just a higher degree of lumens, right? Like get outside and get some sunshine to balance out that spectrum, because it is being interpreted by your mitochondria, which Dude, that was awesome. And I'm so grateful for you, man. Great to have you, brother. Thank you for some amazing conversations, some amazing knowledge. And where can everybody find you and your academy?
AdvancedCoachingAcademy.com is our education website. The ACA, yeah, the AdvancedCoachingAcademy.com. You'll find me on Instagram. Is kind of my main platform now, which is at the PT Coach. You'll find me on there because that's what I do. I coach PTs. Yeah. And everywhere else, it's Phil Learney. You'll find me on Twitter under Phil Learney. You'll find me on Facebook under Phil Learney. So yeah.
And if you didn't understand everything Phil was saying, we're going to put subtitles on a YouTube video. No, this is
and
much
for the
better.
UK edition, are we going to put subtitles for you?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in to my conversation with Phil Learney. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and YouTube. Have an amazing day.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Muscle Intelligence. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to share it with at least one person you know. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Ben Pekulski and the producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.